Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm going to try and do it in English if it's okay, if there's no objection. Um, is Engels of Afrikaans doen nou?
Yeah, no, English, because
Okay,
this will be handed out on the groups to share. So
okay,
thank you, Francois.
you're welcome. Right, everyone, thank you for taking time to make time to go through this. Thank you, Is, for the opportunity. Can you guys see my screen fine?
Yes, we can. Can you
Right.
enlarge it a little bit?
Yes, I'm going to do that now first.
Thank you.
There we go. Is it full screen now?
That is better. Yes, thank you.
All right, perfect. All right, guys. Just want to start it off with some prayer. I hope that's fine. Thank you, Abba Father, for this time. Thank you for everyone that's on this call tonight with us. Thank you for the people that will listen to this recording. Lord, we pray that we will have open hearts to receive tonight. Lord, I pray for wisdom and knowledge and understanding that you will lead and guide me and Esme and everyone on this call. And yeah, Lord, let your Holy Spirit just flow and be with us. And may this just be for peace and understanding and for increasement of just where we're going. We thank you for this time. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, guys. This is just a disclaimer. This is not Sorry, guys, if you don't mind muting yourself, I would appreciate that, 'cause it's quite loud in my ears. Let me see if let me mute on this my side.
Yeah, I can't mute them. Sorry.
Sorry.
Jimmy, it's still you that's unmuted.
I'm muted now. As if I see something, I'll okay. Okay, guys, just a disclaimer from my side. I'm not a financial advisor, financial expert or anything. So this is just for information purposes. I advise everyone to do their own research. But yeah, this is to broaden people's understanding, not just around crypto, but also, the financial systems and where we're going. If I'm looking towards this side and not looking into the cameras, because my other screen and that is where the presentation is on.
We can't see your face anyway. We can only see the screen, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, perfect. Thanks, Is. That makes it a little more better for me. All right, guys. So I would like to make it an interactive session. So please ask questions, stop me. If you have any questions, if I don't cover it in the notes later or don't talk about it later, we can answer it. So please feel free to stop me. There's no stupid questions. There's no wrong questions. There's none of that. So please, guys, interact. I think the best way of learning is to interact and engage. So I'm not a know-it-all. I've got some good understanding, I would say, about cryptocurrencies, the financial markets, the financial systems, and where we're heading. But I'd like you guys to interact. So I don't know if who has ever been scammed by crypto? Can you guys tell me who's ever been in a Ponzi scheme of some sort that involved crypto?
So how many do you want? I can give you 5 years worth of scams.
Oh boy. So I'm gonna thank you for answering. Um, did that involve you giving custody of your crypto to someone, or were you prompted or advised to
Both.
pay both? Is it?
Both. Yeah, but those were in the early days when we were still all going to be multimillionaires from crypto. And everybody, took the opportunity, as they are doing with everything new, is to the investments would run for a couple of months and then boom, all your money's gone. So yeah.
Is MTI one of them?
Yep. I had 5 Bitcoin in MTI, or my hubby and I, we had 5 Bitcoin in MTI.
For me, it was a funny experience. I joined MTI 2 weeks before all the before you couldn't access your stuff and the guy ran away. 2 weeks. So it was very, very funny for me. So who's scared of crypto? You guys can just raise your hands. You don't have to answer. If you the raise hand function on the Zoom, if you guys want to use that, we can use that. Okay.
No, I don't think anybody is scared. They're just not informed.
Okay. See, there was one hand. Okay, guys. So I'm going to take a bit of a detour. The idea for me or the purpose of the session is obviously crypto. Guys, please mute yourself. Um, Mo. Let me see if I can mute. I can't mute them. There we go. The idea I was saying, the idea of the session is to give you a bit of a foundation, a bit of background in terms of digital currencies, not just crypto. I don't want to just spoon feed you guys in the sense that I don't mind helping guys. Please, anytime reach out to me. I'll always assist you, as far as I can. But the idea for me is to enable you guys to do it yourself, to understand crypto, to understand stable coins. I don't want it to be another hype and we do this, but I need you to start. The idea is to trigger something, to challenge your thinking in some areas when it comes to financial systems, is to challenge you so that you can start thinking outside the box. This is the GFG community. The whole idea is for us to be sovereign and not be governed by people or governments or corrupt or the cabal or the Illuminati, whoever you want to call it, the Rothschilds, the British Crown, or whoever. But the idea is to be challenged in the sense that we want to start thinking outside the box, start exploring other ideas. So I'm going to give a brief background in terms of how money became digital. I believe the future of financial systems will be digital. I see, we can deny it. We can try and stop the train. It's like the AI race. It's coming, whether or not you want to believe it, or you want to stop it, or you want to protest. It's coming. The idea for us, or the goal that we should have, is rather let's see how we can get onto this train safely, and at the same time know which stations to get off and which stations to get on, which is safe. The toll gates that we need to pay, which gate should we go through. People would say, no, we must go through this gate, this gate. That gate won't necessarily be safe. They're going to get custody of your digital assets, and that's what I want to prevent. By challenging you, the way you think about, the digital finance, or, crypto in specific. So this is just a roadmap. We will go. Yeah, I'm going to skip over that. I want to have some time at the end for Q&A. So I'm going to go quickly through this session, through the slides. It's just the digital evolution of money and the financial system. Before we can explain cryptocurrency, we must first understand the bigger story. Crypto money didn't become digital overnight. Money has always changed when society changed, and as evolution went on. It was never just cash. Before cryptocurrency entered the conversation, money has already become largely digital. Salaries, card payments, banking apps, EFTs, online shopping, and mobile transfers on your banking app on your phone. It was, in a sense, invisible financial infrastructure operating behind the scenes. So this is just a high level, guys. There might be obviously at some point things that happen, but it's just a high level. In the old days we had barter. We exchanged good for this, for that. I gave you a rope, you gave me wool, or whatever the case might be. Then, the next it transformed to gold and silver, precious metals primarily, and then we started with the paper money. And I think a lot of people will know that's when the whole, I don't want to say nonsense, but that's where the corruption came in. Paper, it's more fiat currency, which we all know that year by year, inflation goes up, and the actual fiat currency that you hold, whether it be dollar or any currency, it can be rand, it just depreciate. That buying power, it's not the same that it was 10 years, 20 years ago. Um, then became the banking system, the the cartel as we know it, or the cabal. Guys, again, please stop me at any time, ask questions. I really want this to be an interactive session. I don't want to be doing all the talking. So ask questions, challenge me. That we can, this is really open floor for everyone, open door policy. We can all, we're all like-minded. We have the same goals, but it doesn't mean we agree on everything. I might not know certain things, and other people might be better equipped to answer things. So please, challenge me. Getting back to the banking system, came in, and yeah, when the Federal Reserve, I believe it's 1976, Nixon, president at the United States at that point, they said it was illegal to have gold or precious metals in your custody. So everyone had to go hand in their gold and their silver at the banks because it was illegal. That was a law that was passed. And then I believe 2 months or 3 months later, they revalue gold. So I think it was $27 or $16 or $18, and they revalued it to 38. So it went up overnight, like 0.15% overnight. And then at the same time, they went off the gold back currency. So the US dollar was always priced. Gold was always priced in the dollar, but it was the fiat currency in the bank. The central banks, they had to, if they have $100 in their bank account, or they lend $100 to someone, they had to have $100 worth of gold backed that currency, and that was, to keep them safe. Then they went off the gold standard for whatever reason. I have my own theories around it, but yeah, then it became the Federal Reserve came in. They started printing money out of thin air. We will go into depth in later sessions, around it. How the people, I say people, but how the government started changing, and everyone was following America at that state because they were you know, the global nation, and they were so wealthy, and so whatever America does, everyone else follows. Back in those days, I believe it's changing. But then you had banking. You went into a bank, you asked for money, they gave you. Then become electronic payments, cards, ATMs, tap to pay. You have the mobile app, and now crypto. It wasn't the cryptocurrency wasn't the beginning of digital money. It's just a new layer. It's a new system, if I can call it a new financial system. So I believe everything is going digitally, but it's just a new way of moving money, of getting money. Um, the challenges with traditional finance systems, and that's now, the banks as we know it, FNB, Capitec in South Africa. There's cross-border delays. So international transfer takes long. You pay ridiculous fees. The SWIFT payment system is operating. They need to clear it. So it goes from our bank. So let's say I'm a Capitec person. I'm banking with Capitec. Now I want to send money to a company in America. So what happens? Capitec sends that funds. You transfer it on your banking app, or you try and do an EFT. It first goes to Reserve Bank of South Africa. Then it goes from there. It might take 7 days to arrive in America's one of their central banks. From there, it gets cleared, and then it goes to that in that jurisdiction of where that company is. So let's say the company is based in Oklahoma. It will go to one of their district banks, and then every time it moves hands or goes from one party to another party, there's fees that you pay, and it's ridiculous fees. And also there's limited access to for people in America or people in Africa to send funds to to people overseas. So they're working, let's say they're working in America, they need to send the money to Kenya or Malawi or whatever. It's not a lot of people have access to dollars in Africa. Well, that was the challenge. And I believe, cryptocurrency or digital finance, digital assets is solving that problem. Um, so the challenge is like with the internet, internet came, well, the dot-com bubble happened. I'm going a bit off track, but internet now, you can send something on Facebook. It's instantly someone in Germany can see it within 2 seconds, or not, 1 second they can see it. And the technology has improved so much, but the challenge was that the financial systems, the rails, the plumbing that is in place globally, is that they didn't evolve as much as the internet, as the technology was driven. And so yeah, this is just the traditional payment flow that I just explained to. I'm not going to really go in depth, but there's a note here at the bottom that I said this is not bad technology. It's all the infrastructure trying to serve a faster digital world, which I just went over as well. And then Bitcoin. Everyone heard about Bitcoin. That's how, that was the first cryptocurrency that it came out in, I think, 2009. Satoshi, no one still knows. There's theories of who he is, but no one knows who he is. He developed this cryptocurrency, the digital ledger that goes with it, the white papers, and he published it online. People started sharing it, and it's open source technology. I don't want to go into depth unless someone wants me to.
Sorry, just explain what is open source technology, please.
Okay, so blockchain. So let's take the ledger. Bitcoin is built on the asset built Bitcoin. The coin Bitcoin is built on public ledger. So it's open source, meaning I can come as a developer, use that technology and build an app on top of that. Does that answer, or must I go in more detail? Is
It's yeah. It's in simple terms. It just means that the knowledge of how it's built is open for anybody to read and see and make improvements through a community effort or whatever. It's not closed. That's all it means.
yeah. So yeah, yes and no. Sorry, I'm going to try and explain it better. So open source means the no one can make the Bitcoin better in the technology that's there better. They can build apps on top of Bitcoin that the app might be better, serving different needs, different products, but no one can change the technology of Bitcoin because of the validation rules, the nodes, the blockchain behind it. Um, you can't necessarily change it. You can make it better by plugging in an app on top of the technology that's already there, the software, if I can call it that. The ledger, that's what cryptocurrency, each cryptocurrency runs on a ledger. So you can plug in or build on top of the existing software through a app or through a product that's built using that ledger, if that makes sense.
If I can use an example, if that will work, Francois, is it like GFG, where they've used the technology of the Ethereum blockchain to build out GFG for what we need?
Exactly, that's exactly that. So so the network is Ethereum in that case. The software is Ethereum, but you can get an add-on software that runs on that network. So the same validation rules or the same blockchain, the nodes, all of that is the same. In the rules are the same, if that makes sense. So the network is there. You plug into the network to enhance or to have an exchange, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Francois.
You're welcome. So Satoshi's This is a guy who founded Bitcoin. His theory was like after the 2008 recession, the marketing, the retail, the housing, all that crash. He said, no, listen, there must be a new way of doing that. A lot of banks and companies closed down. A lot of people lost their money, and he wasn't happy about it because it was all centralized in the sense that the custody belonged with the bank. So they had your money. You borrowed them your money. So I borrow Peter $100, and then or Peter, sorry, let's do it this way. Peter goes to the bank and he puts it in a savings account, $100 there. Then Esme goes and borrows that same $100. It's actually Peter's money, but the bank is facilitating the transaction, and Esme now must pay interest rates on Peter's money. So they take that interest rate. They also have the fees, the account fees, the product fees, and all of that. So we are, in essence, the creditors. So the bank is using our money. We started as the creditors, and the banks were actually the debtors, sorry. But they, through policies, through regulations, they actually, through the Federal Reserve, they come and they changed this whole thing. So Satoshi wasn't happy about this. He said, no, there's another way we must do this. People lost their 401ks, their pensions, as we call it in South Africa. They lost all their funds. People were starving. They couldn't take care of their family. So that's where centralized and decentralized comes in, and we will touch on that later. Um, Satoshi said, no, listen, here's this technology, let's use it, and we're going to empower people to take care of their own funds, to not plug into the system that is corrupt, that steals your money, that makes money off you, and we're in an in-depth slave system for them. Sorry. So, yeah, the questions arise. Excuse me. The question came like, listen, this when another market crash happens, are we safe? Now, does the central bank, in this case, it's the central processor, meaning the central banks, or does the Reserve Bank of South Africa really have our best interests at heart? So everyone saw this, and it was a new way to transfer, assets to from one. I don't need to deposit into the bank. I can go to Esmery straight and give it to her. I can give her, 1 Bitcoin, 5 Bitcoin that she lost, but I do a service now for Esmery, or Esmery does a service through her technology, her app, onboarding for the GFG accounts, and I pay her in Bitcoin. I don't need to use the bank. I don't need to pay transfer fees. Let's say Esmery is sitting in South America and I'm in South Africa. I can send it to her and it's instantly. So that's where the people got, caught onto that. What makes cryptocurrency difference in this Bitcoin, um, it scares the more supply there is, or the more demand there is, the higher the price would go. And I don't think I need to go into a lot of detail on that. But Bitcoin was created with yes, people are mining Bitcoin, but I think 2035 they won't be able to mine Bitcoin anymore. So there's a limited supplies. And a lot of other cryptocurrencies, like you guys probably all heard of XRP, there is just when they created technology, there's only when they launch a token with the blockchain, with the ledger, there's only a limited supply of tokens. So I think Bitcoin, Ripple's one, it's like 100 billion tokens. So the more people start trading in Ripple, in that token, in that asset, there's a burn mechanism behind it. The more demand there is for that coin, the more the price would go up. That's now on Bitcoin itself, and then the same with altcoins, Ripple, Solana, whatever. We'll get into the nice token projects out there in later sessions, which I believe does have, utility. Projects that I've investigated, the last, say, 4 years that I really, there's utility behind it. The white papers is legit. The technology is great, and we'll go into that. Um, and yeah, what makes it different, like I said earlier, like the open infrastructure, the system was created for the internet, not one country or banking schedule or banking system controls it. Anyone can build tools and services around a network. So any any service or any addition or ad hoc product that you want there's this niche market. So let's say it's life insurance. You can build it on the network just for that use case or that app and say, listen, I'm going to sell life insurance policies. Here's the app, here's the tool, and the here's the tool, here's the software and everything, but the fuel, the energy is that token XRP or the token Bitcoin that fuels the network, that runs the network. There's nodes and there's validators, and all of it use that token on that specific. If it's Ethereum, Bitcoin, XRP, it use that token as energy fees, as your petrol or your diesel to go from one point to the other point. Um, let's go. So, yeah, I just added a slide. What is cryptocurrency again? I said it's a simple definition, but we'll go in depth detail work through in future session exactly, what is what. Um, we'll get into the nitty-gritty, we'll geek out a bit. I just stated here, a cryptocurrency is a digital asset that people can send, receive, and store using software wallets. While the network records and verifies transactions without relying on one central processor, it sounds like I'm beating a same horse in terms, we're not relying on one single point of failure, which bank systems or, reserve banks, etc. Cryptocurrency is also a digital asset that can be transferred between people through a computer network instead of relying on one central institution to update every balance. The network records and verifies the transaction using shared digital infrastructure. Yes, just the core ingredients: a digital asset, a wallet, the network, the blockchain, and then the rules. Um, I'll go into in detail, on what blockchain is, the hash graphs, the tokenomics behind it, etc. We pick a project together as a community, Bitcoin, XRP, Ethereum, whatever, and then we can play around with it together. This is just a quick like transaction flow of how cryptocurrency, the actual transaction work. At the user level, cryptocurrency transaction feels simple. You open the wallet, you enter the address, you choose an amount you want to send, and then you send the request, the network confirm, and the other person gets it. But behind it, there's a lot of things now, the geek stuff, the technical stuff in terms of blockchains, validators, hash graphs, etc. I put here just a note. The wallet does not send a file; it signs a transaction request that the network can verify and record. That's now smart contracts. Each blockchain technology has their own smart contracts embedded into the ledger, and you can't you can't tamper with that smart contract. Once the smart contract is there, it's on the ledger, it's there. You can't modify it. You can't change it. And the transaction also on open blockchain like Bitcoin, everyone can see the transaction. It's open for everyone to see. They can go onto the Network Explorer for that particular coin, and they can see any transaction on it. I'll show you guys example in the future exactly. We'll play around, send from one wallet to a different wallet, and then I'll show you what happens behind it, where we can see the transaction, and that's something to take note of. Blockchain or cryptocurrency is open, it's transparent for anyone in the public to see it. It's not hidden. Um, you can't. The record once a transaction, it writes a record onto the block, and it's there. It can't be tampered, it can't be deleted, it can't be modified. It's there. That's how it works. That's how the ledgers, the cryptocurrency, the technology of it works. You can't tamper with it. So, and on the one hand, there's less fraud because it's open and transparent, but on the other hand, there's also, people, if they regulate, or government starts regulating it very intensively, they can control you. But we'll get to that stuff later. I don't want to go down that road now, but I want to, but not now. So yeah, just like I said, behind the scenes, the transaction is being created. The wallet signs the request. That's a smart contract. You click approve, and that's a contract. The network receive it, validates, checks the rules, make sure that it's good. And once it passed the rules, the record is updated. And once it's updated and it's written to the block, it can't be changed. Yeah? The network verifies whether the transaction follows the rules before it becomes part of the shared record. Okay, I mentioned that. This is not just the blocks which I mentioned to you as well. Just out of interest, just a side note, once block 1 is full, it will go to block 2, the transaction records, block 3, block 4, block 5, and it will just keep on happening until you have it's there's no number to it. It will just carry on, carry on, carry on.
And Francois, if I can just jump in there, and this is where the name blockchain comes from. It's a chain of blocks that they create. So, for instance, in one block, there might be 2,000 transactions. It depends on how much the block, how much space there is in the block. And when it's closed, you can't edit it or change it. And then it creates a new block and waits until it's filled up, and it closes, and so it goes on, and it creates this chain, and this is where the word blockchain comes from.
Nice. Yes, I love that. That's exactly, you explain it so good. Let's keep on. Yeah, just a high level again of how the actual blockchain works. It's the transaction is initiated by a user. It gets broadcast to the network through a smart contract. It then gets verified by the nodes. So nodes is just validators, making sure that this transaction that I'm receiving is complying with the rules. So when I say complying with the rules, I mean you can't send Ethereum to Bitcoin, to a Bitcoin address. That doesn't work. We don't want to do that because you lose your money and you can't reverse those transactions. But the nodes, just when I say rules, I mean it's just, okay, is it the right asset, is, et cetera, et cetera. Then it gets added to the block, like is explained now, and then once that block is full, it gets recorded onto the chain, and the blocks are just chronological order, that each block extend and share the history of valid transactions, and those transactions is open for everyone to see. Yeah? On certain networks. We will get to that as well. This is just why it matters. Participants can reference the same transaction history instead of expanding on one private database. It's a rule-based verification and it's transparent. Then I just said that as conceptual overview, the future session, we'll go deeper to the consensus, the validators, the fee, the security, the risk, the network designs. Like I said, we need to pick a project, we need to pick a coin, and then we can, play around with it as a community and say, listen, this is how it works. This is how the network is designed. Pros and cons of the network in certain cases, like for example, Bitcoin can do about 4 transactions per second. XRP can do about, I think, 7,800 something, but there's networks out there that can do up to 1 million transactions per second. Doesn't mean they're better.
Francois?
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry. Just wanted to ask you, while you are on the subject, can you please tell everybody about the crypto addresses? How do you find an address to send crypto to from one exchange or wallet to another? and what it looks like. It's an alphanumeric number, and they must be able to copy that number correctly in order to make sure that the crypto they're sending to it goes to the correct number. And a lesson I learned from a guy is that I must memorize the first and last three digits of the number. So when I paste the number into the field of the recipient address, that those three numbers in the beginning and at the end are there, because otherwise the money will be lost and you won't get it back again. I yield.
Hi, Paul. Thank you for that. So yeah, my plan is in session 2, we can have it next week, Monday, same time, is to actually go through the exact process of opening a wallet or creating a wallet, opening a profile on an exchange, the seed phrases, the security behind it, and then transacting on crypto from, we can use Valor and Luno. Exactly. This is the recipient. We copy that address, and I use the first 4 and the last 4 to verify. But in most cases, the safest way to do it, guys, and I recommend this to everyone I interact with or ask me for help, is I always send a test amount. So if I want to send $100, I send $2 first, and I pay that fee. It's not crazy. It's much better than banking fees. But I rather pay that transaction fee for that test amount and make sure that it goes to the right wallet where I intended to send it, and then I send the rest. Because I've made silly mistakes in the past as well. Where I've sent $1,000 worth of crypto to wrong addresses, and then you can't recover that if you send it to a wrong address. It's gone, guys, and that's why we're having this session, is to make sure that it doesn't happen to our community. And also, there's other things as well, that when I send Ripple, or let's say I send a stable coin, USDT, and I send it to a different recipient, also in USDT, but there's different networks that they use. Certain exchanges use Ethereum. There's a lot of different networks. You can, ERC20, you can use Solana. So when you send when you get the address where this wallet is going, you need to make sure that I want to send Ethereum on the Ethereum network and not on the Solana network. So the recipient wallet address needs to be a Ethereum address and not a Solana network address. But we'll go into detail. And that's exactly what we plan for session 2, is to go through all of that nitty-gritty. I say nitty-gritty, but we're going to go step by step through every single way, every single, from creating a wallet to be able to send, crypto between the wallets to different recipients. And that's my intention is in session 2, is to share my screen, open up a wallet with you guys, open it, South African exchanges, Valor, Altcoin Trader. I really don't like Luno, so you won't see an example of Luno. But if you really want to, you can beg me. I might consider it. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Paul. We're definitely going to cover that. Yeah, so wallets and exchanges is just how people enter the system. So an exchange like Valor, like Binance, like Mixi, whatever, that just allows people to buy, sell, and convert cryptocurrency. Some exchanges are centralized platforms that manage accounts and liquidity, which we need to be careful of, because if your coins sit on an exchange, they have the custody to that. They have the wallet keys because you created that wallet on the exchange. But there's other decentralized systems where we can interact more directly with protocols. It's a safer options. You get cold wallets, you get hard wallets or hot wallets. But again, we're going to go into detail in session 2 into what is better. But it's just important. What we need to note, it's that it's not like a box of coins in it or a wallet that we hold in our in our purse or in our jeans pocket. It's more a tool that controls the interaction with our digital assets on a network. So the network's just the infrastructure, and the wallet and exchanges are access points. Um, our access points, yes, is.
Sorry, Francois, again, I want to jump in there with my example of exchange. So what I usually explain to people, what is an exchange like? It's literally similar to when you want to travel overseas and you need to go to a foreign exchange desk and you need to go and exchange your rands for whatever currency you are going to spend. So all this is like a digital version of that, where you do that yourself. You'll put in, if you're going to South African exchange, you'll put in your rands, you'll buy XRP or Bitcoin or whatever, and then you can do with it what you want, send it or don't or whatever. I yield.
Thanks, Ace. Yeah, so our wallet, so we just put money, funds either through fiat or other cryptocurrency from different wallets, and then we just exchange. So we don't want to hold Ripple anymore. We want to swap that Ripple now for Bitcoin or for Solana or whatever. So the exchange is literally what it means, is exchange. And that's just our on-ramp and off-ramp on, through digital assets that we own. Or we want to take off fiat currency and buy that digital asset, irrespective of what the coin is, or if it's a stable coin or altcoin. That's just that's the infrastructure. That's the shopping center, if I can call it that. We go shop and we buy at Walmart or whatever.
Francois, just quickly, because you've mentioned stable coins now a few times, just to explain to them, what is a stable coin?
Okay, so in the market, Bitcoin's price fluctuates. It's trading now, I think, just above $80,000 Bitcoin. The all-time high for it was like $121,000 per Bitcoin. Ripple goes up to $3. It's currently trading at $1.4. So that fluctuates. Again, that's due to demand and supply, utility behind it, the ecosystem, is there use cases for it, etc., or it's getting manipulated by market makers. But a stable coin it's backed with I'm going to use the USDT, USDC, or Ripple's stable coin. I have one stable coin. It's backed by $1, so it's 1 for 1. If I have 10 stable coins, it's $10. So the price doesn't fluctuate. It doesn't go up and down, up and down. So does that answer it? Is that a nice example?
Yeah, that's perfect. It's
Yeah.
just it's fixed price. It's fixed to whatever it's connected to. Is it dollar? Is it rands? Is it euros? Whatever. It's a fixed coin that people use.
Yeah, so it's a fixed amount. So you have one coin, you have $1. That's basically what it is. In our cases, there's not a stable coin for rand yet. I say yet, I believe there is some movement. I see they're piloting it out in other Africa countries. But yeah, so for us, the thing to keep in mind, yes, you have one stable coin, but the dollar and the rand, sometimes it's trading at 17 rand. I think it came down now to 16.40. So we just need to keep that in mind. But it doesn't, it's not as volatile as an altcoin or the Bitcoin price. So Iran, 28th of February, Iran, so America and Israel bombed Iran. Everything, Bitcoin went down, Ripple went down, oil prices is inflation. People need to, they can't pay back their loans because the stock market's fall, whatever. So it's a volatile market. And we don't for the I'll get to that now. Can I quickly can I use the AFD one example quickly?
Yes, go for it.
Thanks, Ez.
What we understand so far.
Yes. Let's just a disclaimer. This is what we think is going to be. It's not set in stone. So you will have. Maybe I should draw up something on my screen quickly. The AFD one, I think I can just explain it like this. We in GFG are going to get our AFD 500, 280s a month.
Yes, 5280. Franchise hasn't received it yet. That's why he doesn't really know.
Not yet. I'm getting there close, but we're going to receive the 5,280 AFD. Now the AFD one is the digital token of that AFD. So people get all scared. Now I have to trade in crypto. Now I need to do this. It's nothing to be scared of. AFD and AFD1, the AFD1 is your stable coin. So the price of AFD1 is always going to be linked to the AFD, which is obviously the price of gold. It fluctuates, it goes up and down, but that AFD1 is never going to lose value. It might lose value, but you're not gonna overnight, it's gonna be based on the price of gold, basically. So it's backed by gold. The AFD1 is backed by AFD. AFD is backed by gold. So in essence, the AFD1 is like a stable coin. So there is certain exchanges that's going to accept and open the network for AFD1, and you will be able to transfer your AFD1 to the exchange, and now you hold that AFD1. It's got the same value as the AFD. You will then be able to swap that AFD1 for a stable coin or for XRP, for Ripple, send it to your Valor, send it to your South African exchange, convert it there into Rand, and then throw it into your bank account. There's different ways to yeah. What I say is there's different ways. You can have a crypto card as well. That AFD1 can be transferred to a crypto exchange, put that in your wallet, swap it for the stable coin USDT. Now you have, let's say you have $5,000 and it's passed to that wallet, you swap it, and now it's in USD. On your card, you have $5,000 and you can just tap where you go, use it for online banking. In some cases, if you really need the fiat, the actual Rand, then some shops allow you, like Shoprite allows you to withdraw 5,000 max, whatever, at the toll points. But if you need more than that, you're gonna have to go through Valor. Let's say you have 100,000 Rand. You swap or you withdraw it into your bank account. There's a fast pay. I think you pay 35 Rand and then that funds comes immediately. But there's also limits. And you must also be aware that that transaction, everything above 100,000 Rand needs to be reported to the Treasury and the Reserve Bank, and to SARS. So there's different ways that we can navigate through this, and we'll get to that. But what I want to say is that the AFD1, people shouldn't be concerned because it's crypto and they're not sure. It's just a digital asset, guys. Everything that
Francois?
Hi, Paul.
Sorry, can I help you there a bit?
Sure.
The way I see it, the AFD is in our GFG Prosperity account. And when we go liquid and we get the app on the phone, we will get a QR code and we will get a digital wallet, a digital card, a virtual card. And if we want to spend our AFD, we transfer AFD into our digital wallet, digital card, or we use the QR code. And at that point, it is converted automatically by the system into an AFD1. And that then allows us to spend it. That's the way I understand it. Am I right?
I'm not sure about that. The
And
AFD is
Paul,
one.
no, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna, yeah, sorry. I'm not gonna 100% either agree or disagree with you. We actually do not know at all at this stage how it's going to work. So that's what we hope will happen. That's maybe an option, but that's not yet confirmed. Thanks, Paul.
Okay, thank you. I just wasn't sure whether it was what I understood.
Yeah.
Maybe just to
Thanks,
add
Paul.
on it, I joined Tony's session last week, and what I gathered from it, AFD is one currency that you're gonna have your digital card and you can tap and you can trade and everything. AFD1 is another currency that you will be able to use for crypto. So AFD1 is the only crypto part of it. AFD and the digital card that you're referring to now, Paul, is not necessarily related to AFD1. AFD1 is just a digital token of the AFD, which is backed by the gold. So it's two currencies in essence, but they both have the same value. And AFD1 is just for blockchain, for digital. AFD, what you're referring to now in your example, how I understand it, and yet to be confirmed and set in stone, and we'll get that in the manuals that Tony will send out. But AFD is a currency, and you'll have a card. AFD1 is like Rand. You have your bank card, and you can swipe, etc. But the AFD1 is the digital, is the token, the tokenization of AFD. That's how I see it and my understanding as for now. But again, we need to wait for that to come to fruition.
Thanks, Francois.
Thanks, Paul. Let's quickly go through here. That's just the private keys. We'll get into that in the session one when we actually open the wallets. This is a very important part, and how we store those private keys by not doing it online. But we're gonna delve very deep into that in session one, session two. After that session, I would want everyone to be equipped, know exactly how to open a wallet, open up a profile on an exchange, how to send or interact, send from one recipient to another recipient. We're going to go through that there. Yeah, I just said the wallet does not store the coins. It just stores the access to the coins. Here's the exchange on and off ramps. Like I explained, you can take your local currency, make an EFT to exchange like Valor or Altcoin Trader, and then there your rands will be there. The currency, actual rand, will be there, and then you can just buy it for, swap it for, or buy crypto asset, swap or buy, and then you have the wallet and self custody. That's self custody. We'll get into the technicals of that there. Just notes here, exchange helps you to buy, sell, and convert. A wallet helps you to control access to assets on the network. They are related, but they're not the same. So exchange and a wallet's two separate things, and we'll get into the nitty-gritties of it when we open up the accounts next week. Centralized and decentralized. I think I'm going to just skip over this. Centralized custody is just high level. Is if I have Ripple coins or Bitcoin on my Valor exchange, in essence, that means I don't have custody of those tokens. It means Valor owns it. I own it, but I don't have access to it. They are holding it for me. Decentralized is I have a cold wallet, Ledger, or whatever. I've got the cold wallet. It's like the physical assets with me. Or a hot wallet in some cases is the medium, the middle way. And then the decentralized way is I have the access. It's stored on a cold wallet. Again, it comes with risk. You lose the keys for that cold wallet storage, or you lose the actual device, you lose your money. But there's ways. There's some nice technologies out there that have two different cards. Actually, there's three cards. You give one to your mommy and other one for someone else. There's ways to work around it. I believe decentralized is definitely the way to go. We just use the centralized exchanges to on-ramp and off-ramp. Again, yeah, it is just centralized. It's one hub. And I had another word in here, hub. I called it cabal, but I changed it. I said, let me try and be nice. And then decentralized is just, between it gets verified by a network with a lot of participants. Um, the trade-off matters. The real question, oopsie. Yeah, I said the real question is not which system is perfect, but which systems fit the purpose that we need, the risk level, the regulation, and the user needs. What each person's got their own need. I want to buy a house, and the bank doesn't accept crypto, so I need fiat or I need rand. But we'll get into that. Um, Again, centralized and decentralized, not one is better than the other. It's or good or bad. We need both. The decentralized way is better for me in terms of sovereignty. Managing myself, and I don't let the government or the banks dictate to me. Dictate, okay, this is what you're allowed to hold, and I know there's a lot of action in South Africa at the moment about the capital draft that they've proposed and the new SARS things that came out the 1st of March. But I think just to ease people, that is just a draft. It's not set in stone. It's going to take them a while to get that right. And in future sessions, I'll also go through structures, how to, what trust, what PTY, where's your holding company, offshore. I will share with you guys what I do and how to navigate through the system, through the regulations, through, I don't want to say shelf companies, but you can have trust in the Mauritius, for example. The tax or capital gains is tax is very, very attractive, and it's all legal. There's not, my wife asked me the other day, yeah, but the shelf companies in the movies is all the people that's corrupt and they're passing. I said, yeah, I know, but that's not what we're going to do. It was just very funny. The thing is that encouraged me with this new South African bill that the draft that they proposed, and which is open for comments, by the way. It's just they know what's coming in terms of Bitcoin and gold. The reevaluation of gold. There's theories behind that, but they know that the governments are losing access. And when I say access, they're losing control of people from that is they are so in the death death slave systems, like they're in depth. They credit the IOUs and the interest, and now crypto gives people the option to govern themselves, govern their own finance, and now they're starting to catch up and see what's happening with the Genius Act that passed last year in June, in America, and the Clarity Act that's about to pass. I believe it will be proposed to Senate, I think, next week to get approved. Once it's approved, it goes to Trump's desk, and he's going to sign the Clarity Act. But again, in future sessions, we can have separate sessions on that. I think I explained already why crypto matters, the benefits. Um, just yeah, it's programmable finance. I believe in the future, real world assets like your house, you'll have options to tokenize it. It's gonna, sit on a ledger. You sell your house. It's just a transaction, 2 minutes, 2 seconds, or 1 second. The other person has it. The digital ownership of it. I believe that's the future. Where we're going. Everything's going to be tokenized. Um, Opportunities and risk. We'll go into detail with that as well. Um, I believe, like I said, like altcoins, the prices is volatile. But it's safer to also store it in a stable coin. There's also staking, um, that you can stake, and I think this is the big thing that banks, there's institutions out there that if you put your money, you park your money there, and you loan it to them, you borrow it to them, they or lend it to them, they give you interest rates, which is like some places give you like 15% interest, for for, giving them your assets or giving them your money. Where banks, what I think they give you 3.5, or what's it, 4.8. I think that then you need to also, it needs to be above 100,000. And I think this is what making the governments and the bank or the banking cartel cabal system people so scared, is that they can even, there's exchanges that you give your asset as collateral and you can borrow from them at 2% and not your typical 20, 24% or 18% that you pay the banks. So again, it's like we're taking money away from the banking, the banks, the central banks, the reserve banks. Um, essence taking money out of the cabal people, the people that runs the financial industrial complex, and they don't like it. We'll hear a lot of speculations of people being regulated. You're not allowed to have more than R1 million of Bitcoin, otherwise you need to sell it to the government. There's ways that we're going to work around this, guys. There's way, and it's legal. It's all legal. They're not going to come and lock you up and throw you in jail. We're not doing that, though. Yeah, just smart payments, digital ID, tokenized. Like I said, everything's going to be tokenized. Double-edged sword. Yeah, it's just convenient. The control questions again, that like there's a control grid that I believe that they're trying to put in place, but we don't have to be part of that slave system, guys. We don't need to. We need to equip ourselves. We need to understand the financial system and where it's going, and the vehicle is cryptocurrency. This is why education matters. The future should not be only adopted, meaning we should not just do it because they say so. We need to understand why. The future of finance will be more digital, more programmable, and more connected. The question is how people, businesses, and societies prepare for it. And then the last one, the financial world is not standing still, neither should we, or understanding of it. And now I'm going to open the floor for questions. Sorry, just quickly, this is just a few rough guidelines in terms of where possible sessions we can have. This can change as the needs change, guys, in the community. Like I said, the next session we will go into hands-on training, or hands-on how we create wallets, how we open accounts, how we send and receive, how we convert our rands to a digital currency, the on and off ramps, and then key security risks, regulation, and the future of finance. And then if people's interested, which I believe everyone should also just have, some knowledge of it, staking, DeFi applications, liquidity pools, farming pools, and smart systems. And then regulations and structures. When I say structures, I mean the way we structure our digital finance. Again, I'm not a financial advisor. You should, seek financial advice. But there's things that I put in place, structures I put in place through trust. I know everyone has heard that you need to have a trust and all your assets should sit in a trust, and you should have a holding company and a PTY and a trading company, all that. I will explain to you. I've done so much research on this, guys. For my kids, I've got 4 kids, so I need to keep them safe. My mom stays with us. I'm taking care of her, so I need to prepare for what's coming. And then also, the control grid, we'll get into that. And then, the goal is empowering to understanding, not speculation, not hype, and not fear. We should definitely not be scared of this, because it's not that scary once you understand it.
Thank you, Francois. You've used a lot of big words that we don't know what they mean yet. But
Sorry.
I'm sure as we go, no, that's the language we need to learn. But I'm sure as we go along, you'll educate us on the right things to do. And I appreciate you. Thank you very much from my side.
You're welcome, Ez, and thank you again for giving us the opportunity. And guys, Ez created that training session on the Telegram group. That group, guys, please feel free to hit me with 1,000,000 questions if you want. It also helps me to gauge and see where we are as a community. what is needed and what training, we need for the next sessions. I will, like I said, I will always help as much as far as I can. Yeah, let's all learn together and help and equip ourselves to, make a good change for the community. Is there
The
any
floor
other?
is open for questions.
Thanks, Ace. I don't see anything in the chat.
Yes, I just want to ask a question.
Sure.
Can we have personal sessions with you? Is
Sure.
that possible?
We can do that, guys.
Yeah.
It might be at this time of the night, like 8 o'clock and later. I've got a 7-year-old Baba, 7-month-old Baba, and a 5-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 15-year-old. So I've got one in each stage. So they take a lot of my attention from 2 o'clock in the afternoon up until 8 o'clock, like between 6 and 8 is rush hour. But Tom, you're more than welcome. You can reach out to me on the community group as well, and then we can schedule something like this on Zoom, more personal. I won't mind doing that at all.
Baie dankie.
Plesier, Tom. Is there any other questions from the floor, guys?
I just want to say that because we're on Telegram and the people don't fix their settings, many of us are being added onto investment groups and crypto groups, and put in just 500 Rand and you'll get 5,000 Rand. And there's so many people that believe that. And we just need to constantly warn people, if anybody adds you to some financial investment group on Telegram, block and delete. None of those has ever been a legitimate system.
No, there's actually a setting is that you can change, because I was also being added to all this nonsense. But there's a setting you can put on your profile that don't allow anyone to add you unless you approve it or something like that. I can't remember where the setting is, but no one can add me to these things. But is right. You guys must really be careful for that. The trading bots and all that stuff. It's scary, guys. And just out of iPad, go ahead. Paul, sorry.
Another easy way to do it is if you see that you are on a group, you just tap the group and you've got the 3 vertical dots on the top right corner, and you tap there and you get a drop down menu at the bottom that says leave group.
Yes.
And you just click leave group and you're out.
Yeah.
And if you want to, if it's still there, you can press and hold and then press the rubbish bin icon at the top and it will delete that conversation.
Yeah, well, thanks, Paul. It took me a while to figure that one out as well, because I was in so many groups, and then I actually Googled how to stop being added to these groups, and then I figured that out as well. Thanks for that, Paul. I want to go through. Is there anyone else? Guys, please don't be shy. Like, you're more than welcome to ask. Otherwise, I'm going to start picking someone from the chat. So.
If I can, I just want to say thank you. I was scared of this whole thing. Very much looking forward to GFG and everything, but I want to be able to negotiate my own way around, not necessarily have to ask Darby or my husband, when I need to do something. So I'm very appreciative of the way that you are informing us, and I think it's going to be very hands-on, and I'm looking forward to this coming week. Thank you so much, Esme, you too.
Thank you, Vicky.
Thank you, Vicky.
Okay, guys, if there's no one else, please, guys, ask her.
Fransha, I think it's already late. It's almost 9:30. So this was a more informative session. I think the next time when it comes to hands-on, you're going to have a lot of questions to field. So that's where you're going to get really interactive. So I just want to say thank you for your time. We appreciate you, and looking forward to the next sessions.
Thank you, Ace. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'll upload the recording to the CBI training group. And then, yeah, guys, next week, Monday, same time, and then we'll get our hands dirty and play around there.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Bye. Blessings.
Thank you. Good night.